Hello and welcome to Estuary TV News with me, James Dunn. In tonight's show, I talked to a military author about the home front and Dave Nunn's Got the Sport. But first, here's Richard Morris with the news headlines.
Hello, in the headlines today, John Harrison's name is being put firmly on the map in Barrow-upon-Humber Marketplace, and Hull is increasing its construction ambitions for the Greenport project. Union members want the living wage for all staff and are willing to strike again unless the government meets their demands in an ongoing pay dispute. Medical staff walked out for 4 hours yesterday and are now working to rule for 4 days because of a dispute over pay. Unison claim that a meagre 1% pay rise offered wouldn't apply to lower paid workers and want it applied universally. Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt says meeting their demands would force hospital bosses to make people redundant. But local Unison rep Paul Swarbrick says unless they start negotiating, there will be more industrial action.
What we're hoping for is that they'll see sense, come around the table. We want to get this across to the public as well. You know, these people do not take this action lightly. Many of these members have never been on strike in their lives. So it's a big day for them. But we're hoping that the government will see that there's a lot of anger over the imposition, or their imposition of the 1%, but only for those at the top of the pay band. We got a lot of support from the public, and I think on message boards and websites and comments in newspapers, it's been pretty positive, and I think they realise what a hard job that these NHS staff do for themselves.
There's been an update in the case of the missing trawler Gull. Human remains were found in the Murmansk region of Russia in July 2012. Since then, the Russian authorities have now concluded that the remains most likely belong to the northern Russian or Finno-Ugric population and are not linked to the crew of the Hull trawler Gull. Humberside Police are now saying that there is no longer a need for them to travel to Russia and that family liaison officers have updated the families involved. Humberside Police have reiterated that they are willing to accept any new information about the case. John Harrison's name will be put firmly on the map when Barrow Marketplace undergoes a transformation thanks to a £50,000 grant. The money will be used by the Better Barrow Group to create a centre for the community and focus on the area's rich heritage.
We want to have this centre of the village much more appropriate for community events. So instead of having a car park here, for instance, we have a nice, well-paved environment. We will have parking, but it will be on the edge rather than in the middle. And as part of the design, what we want to do is to celebrate the life and work of John Harrison, our local hero, and we will do that through representing things like the compass in the paving, showing a longitude line, and hopefully some information boards, not too many, but enough just to tell a bit of the story of John Longitude Harrison.
And at nearby Thornton Abbey, its picnic area has benefited from a £5,000 grant, which has paid for new benches and seating after the others had become worn out. Humberside Police are appealing for information relating to a traffic collision in Althorpe, North Lincolnshire. It happened on the A18 junction to the village at 9:45 in the morning last Monday. The car was described as a Citroën or Renault Clio Sport, collided with a motorbike, causing the rider to fall off. The driver of the car failed to stop and headed along the A18 towards Crowle. The motorbike rider sustained whiplash injuries and bruising. Anyone with any kind of information is urged to contact Humberside Police. Hull East MP Carl Turner visited a construction college in Hull last week. The Preston Road campus of Hull College offers courses in construction, specifically bricklaying and carpentry, and offers the courses at levels 1 to 3. The college is seizing opportunities that require local workers, like the forthcoming Siemens investment in Hull Docks. Carl Turner, MP for East Hull, explained how courses like this are vital to decrease unemployment.
Look, it's absolutely essential that we upskill people in this area. People are struggling to find employment in East Hull. We've got an unemployment rate of about 9% in East Hull. It's about 7.5% to 8% across the city. So it's absolutely essential that people get the skills they need to find full-term, well-paid employment in this area of the city.
That's all from me for now, and we'll be back with more news soon. If you have any news for us, then don't hesitate to contact us on Grimsby 01472 315 561. Bye for now.
Thank you, Richard. Now, next on the show, I'm talking to military historian Tim Lynch. He's a member of the Historical Writers Association and has written a number of titles including Silent Skies, Courage Under Fire and Operation Market Garden. Earlier this week, I caught up with Tim and talked about how he started out as a writer and his recent release, Yorkshire's War. So here with me today, I've got Tim Lynch, a military history author. Hello, Tim. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what it is you do. I mean, how did you first get into writing about military history?
Well, I've always had an interest in military history, and I served in the military for a few years myself.
Oh, yeah.
Back in 2002, I was invited to go back to the Falklands on a
Where
return
you
visit for
served.
veterans. Yeah. And just on the off chance, I contacted a few magazines and asked if they'd be interested in an article about it, and they were. And so things kind of snowballed from there, so I started to write regularly for various magazines, and from there progressed on to books.
Okay, so you went from articles to books, and the more you found out, were you even more captivated?
I think it's one of those things with history. I'm absolutely passionate. I love it. And the more you get into it, the more interesting it becomes. And it reached the point during the research for my book about the conscripts in the First World War, where I was driving to work and thinking, oh, that's Arnold's house. And oh, that's where Harold used to go drinking. And the people suddenly come alive again. I remember going to Normandy, the Pont de Hoc, with my family, and I was giving them the tour, and they were really interested. But I was able to say to my daughter, look, where you're standing now, there's a German soldier on the morning of D-Day, and he was firing a rifle down that way. And she kind of gave me that look and said, yeah.
And
right.
how old was she?
She was about 9 at the time, 9 or 10.
Not your probably your average
Not my
age
target
group.
audience, no, but she was saying, yeah, right, how do you know that? And I said, because there's his bullet. And rabbits had been digging away and
Wow.
unearthed the bullet. And so she held it. And I said, you know, we're the first people to hold that since that German soldier.
Wow, I mean, what better to make it really come alive?
Yeah. And you could see the light go on in her eyes. And ever since then, it's been me dragging her out of museums.
So it's interesting because I'd like to know a little bit about your research techniques, because I think there's an awful lot of people who are interested in military history, and they've really come out of the woodwork this year since we're basically commemorating the 100 years since the outbreak of the First World War. How do you go about finding local information about what happened during the war?
It's a lot easier these days because of the internet. And there's vast amounts of information out there. It's a question of going out there and finding it. Reading through local newspapers, it's a real eye-opener, because the stories that you get in the local papers in 1914 are not really that different to the ones you get in 2014. They're the same sort of issues. It's the youth of today, they're out of control, there's drunks hanging around the streets, and you just get immersed in it. And the more you find out, the more you want to find out.
And you brought something interesting along with you today, actually, which you showed me earlier. And this is a fascinating, a delightful little book. Tell me a little bit about what we've got here. I'm going to be very careful. I don't want to manhandle it too much.
Well, I'm a great believer. I'm not too precious about these sort of things. I like people to handle them because I like people to hold it and think, wow, this is nearly 100 years old. And to open it and to read it. And basically it's produced by the City of Hull, and it's a souvenir of the war. It's a history of Hull, and then there's a whole chapter on what Hull did during the war. So we've got things like what happened to the fishing industry, what the tramways were doing, how the local golf club got involved by creating their own home guard unit. You pick up all kinds of little bits of information. Hull newspapers are online, and there's a great letter in one of them from a guy who said, we have Zeppelins coming over. Why don't we form a squad? I'll navigate. We just need a pilot who's willing to ram them.
People really were quite brave about things, weren't they?
Brave, yeah, there's other words for it.
Yes, indeed.
But when you start to pick up these little bits of snippets, it's it's a whole new world, and it's fascinating to get into.
And it's interesting what you've been talking about there, about what's in there, about how Hull reacted to the war. And your book here, Yorkshire's War, it's about people who fought elsewhere, but it's also about life of normal people in and around Yorkshire, isn't it?
It is, yes. When we think of the First World War, we think of the Western Front. Well, we call it the Western Front for a reason, because there were lots and lots of fronts. Soldiers were serving in Singapore, even in China, Siberia, India, Africa, but most importantly, the home front. And it was the first time that Britain had actually been under attack.
And what sort of things were facing people in Yorkshire at that time?
At the start of the war, there was absolute chaos because nobody knew what was happening. Bradford had a large German population. The mayor had been German. Most of the civic leaders had been German. What do you do? Bradford women who had married a German under the Terms of Naturalisation Act were technically Germans, and now they were the enemy. But at the same time, while you're rounding up some of the Germans and putting them into internment camps, the son of the of German immigrants was the commanding officer of the Bradford Pals. So there's this real kind of mixture of emotions and feelings for people in Yorkshire. Lots of lads obviously went off to war.
But people adapted.
You know, and people got on with things.
And I suppose that's the way British people are supposed to do things, or certainly were back then.
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, Tim, but thank you very much for coming in and talking to me.
Thank you.
And you can get any of Tim's books on Amazon. Now, next up, it's Dave Nunn with the sport.
Thanks, James. First, we turn to under fire Scunthorpe United, who finally got a win with a 3-0 victory away at Gillingham on Saturday. It comes after the club sacked their manager, Russ Wilcox, last week. They are currently 23rd in the table, but will be hoping for a turnaround under new manager Mark Robbins, who they appointed yesterday. His last job was at Huddersfield, but he was sacked in August. Grimsby Town also scored a win with a 1-0 victory away at Wrexham at the weekend. It's the first win since the 30th of September for the side after 2 draws and a loss. North Ferriby United had made it into the 4th qualifying round of the FA Cup after a 2-1 victory over Grantham Town, thanks to a goal in the 85th minute. And speaking of the FA Cup, the 4th round matches have been drawn. Grimsby Town will play a home game against Conference North side Guiseley on the 25th of October. And North Ferriby will play either Colwyn Bay FC from the North Panorama Conference or Warrington Town FC from the Evo Stick MPL First Division North. In ice hockey on Sunday evening, Hull Stingrays lost their 4th game in a row, this time 3-2 at home to Sheffield Steelers. Next up for the Stingrays is Edinburgh Capitals at home on Saturday, who beat them 5-2 on the 30th of September. And Hull KR's second row Jason Neverton's playing career at the club has drawn to a close. However, coach Chris Chester has stated that as the club's longest serving player, his experience will be utilised off the field in another role elsewhere. And the Windmill 41st World Darts competition took place in Hull this weekend. The ladies' winner was Anastasia Dobromyslovsa and the men's winner was Martin Phillips. They were given their titles at Hull City Hall. Hull FC wheelchair rugby team has been going for a year and a half now. The team has completed its first season in an elite league and won 2 out of its 8 games. We spoke to team founder Mike Swanger about why people are signing up to the team.
From my experience, it's not so much, like I said, it's not so much sort of like shone upon now, disability, and at the end of the day, we are people, and we've still got a life to lead, and just from doing sport, it's a great way of sort of like getting ourselves out there and socialising with different people, and it's really good.
That's it for the sport. Back to James.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, but don't forget that you can share any stories or views with us by calling 01472 31553. Get in touch on Facebook or Twitter, or email us on news@estuary.tv. Well, that's it from me. Bye for now.